Brothers in the Bush, Part 1, The Good Times. The sun hung low over the tree line as Roger's beat-up Ford F-150 rumbled down the dirt road, kicking up clouds of dust that hung in the golden afternoon light. Harry rode shotgun, one arm hanging out the window, tapping the door panel to the rhythm of whatever classic rock station was crackling through the speakers. "I'm telling you, man," Roger said, taking a drag from his cigarette and flicking ash out his window. "This is going to be the trip. I can feel it. We're going to bag a monster buck, catch fish till our arms fall off, and get so fucked up we forget our own names." Harry laughed, cracking open another Molson Canadian from the cooler wedged between them. "You say that every time, Raj. Every single time. And you know what happens? We come back with maybe a couple of fish, sunburns, and you lose your lighter in the woods. That was one time. 3 times. Okay, 3 times. But this time's different." Roger grinned, his shaggy brown hair falling into his eyes. He'd been growing it out since March, claiming it made him look rugged as fuck. Harry thought it made him look like a sheepdog, but he kept that to himself. They'd been planning this trip for months, a proper expedition into the woods behind Capriole, all the way up to Ishpatina Ridge. The highest point in Ontario, Roger kept reminding him, like that made it Everest or something. But Harry had to admit, he was excited too. They'd been doing these trips since they were 17, back when they'd just gotten their licenses and thought camping meant sleeping in the truck bed with a case of beer and a bag of chips. Now they were 24, and not much had changed except they had better gear and Roger had discovered weed. "Pass me that joint from the glove box," Roger said, eyes on the road. "You're driving." "So? It's a dirt road in the middle of nowhere. What am I going to hit? A moose?" "Don't even joke about that, man. My uncle hit a moose up near Timmins, totaled his truck. The moose walked away." "Moose are indestructible. That's just science." Roger reached across and popped the glove box himself, fishing out a pre-rolled joint. "Light this for me, would you?" Harry sighed but complied, sparking his lighter and holding it to the tip while Roger took a pull, one hand on the wheel. The sweet, skunky smell filled the cab immediately. "You're gonna get us pulled over." "By who? The squirrels?" Roger exhaled a cloud of smoke out of the window. "Relax, Harry. We're in the wilderness now. No rules, no responsibilities, just 2 best friends and the great Canadian outdoors." Harry had to smile at that. This was Roger's natural state. Perpetually optimistic, perpetually stoned, perpetually convinced that everything would work out fine. Somehow, it usually did. Harry was the opposite, always planning, always worrying, always making sure they had enough supplies and someone knew where they were going. They balanced each other out, had since they met in grade 9 when Roger had asked to copy Harry's math homework, and they'd been inseparable ever since. "So, what's the plan?" Harry asked, taking a swig of his beer. "We setting up base camp first or going straight for the ridge?" "Nah, man. We got time. I want to do some hunting first, maybe hit up Beaver Lake for some fishing. I heard there's speckled trout up there that'll make your dick hard." "That's not how trout work." "You don't know that." They drove for another hour, the road getting progressively worse until it was barely more than 2 ruts through the bush. Roger had to slow down to a crawl, navigating around rocks and fallen branches. The forest pressed in on both sides, thick with black spruce and jack pine, the undergrowth dense with ferns and moss. Finally, Roger pulled off into a small clearing and killed the engine. "All right, this is us. Let's get the side-by-side unloaded and start making some memories." The side-by-side was Roger's pride and joy, a Polaris Ranger he'd bought used last summer with money he'd saved from his job at the mill. It was beat to shit, covered in scratches and dents, but it ran like a dream. They spent the next 20 minutes unloading it from the trailer, along with their gear: tent, sleeping bags, coolers full of food and beer, hunting rifles, fishing rods, and enough ammunition to start a small war. "Jesus, Raj, how much ammo did you bring?" "Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. We're hunting deer, not invading Poland." Roger just grinned and tossed Harry a box of shells. "Load up, soldier. We got work to do." They strapped their gear onto the Ranger. Roger taking the driver's seat while Harry rode shotgun, his rifle across his lap. The machine roared to life, and they took off into the woods, following an old logging road that wound deeper into the forest. The hunting started well enough. They spotted some tracks near a creek bed, fresh enough that Roger insisted they were definitely from this morning, maybe even an hour ago. They set up in a good spot with clear sight lines, downwind from where they figured the deer would come through. Then they waited, and waited. Roger pulled out another joint. Harry told him to put it away because the smell would spook anything within a mile. Roger argued that deer didn't give a shit about weed. They bickered quietly for 20 minutes until Harry finally let him smoke it just to shut him up. 3 hours later, they hadn't seen so much as a rabbit. "This is bullshit," Roger muttered, stubbing out his third cigarette. "Where are all the fucking deer?" "Probably wherever you're not blowing smoke signals." "Oh, fuck off. You're just mad because you're sober and bored." Harry couldn't really argue with that. He cracked another beer. "Let's give it another hour, then head up to Beaver Lake. At least we can catch some fish." "Fine, but I'm telling you there's a monster buck out here somewhere with my name on it." The monster buck never materialized. By the time the sun started dipping toward the horizon, they'd packed up their gear and headed north toward Beaver Lake. The trail got rougher, climbing steadily uphill through dense forest. Roger had to navigate around deadfalls and washouts, the ranger's engine whining in protest. "You sure this thing can make it?" Harry asked, gripping the roll bar as they bounced over a particularly nasty section. "She's made it through worse. Remember that time we got stuck in that bog near Sudbury?" "Yeah, and it took us 6 hours in a tow truck to get out. But we got out. That's the important part." They crested a ridge, and suddenly the forest opened up. Beaver Lake spread out before them, maybe 200 meters across, perfectly round and impossibly blue. It sat in a natural bowl at the top of the hill, surrounded by granite outcroppings and stunted pines. The surface was glass smooth, reflecting the sky like a mirror. "Holy shit," Harry breathed. "I forgot how nice this place is." "Right?" Roger killed the engine, and the silence rushed in, just wind in the trees and the distant call of a loon. "This is what I'm talking about, man. This is living." They unloaded their fishing gear and walked down to the shore. That's when Roger spotted it. A small aluminum boat pulled up on the beach, oars tucked inside. "No fucking way." Harry followed his gaze. "Raj, no." "Raj, yes." "That's someone's boat. Someone who's not here. Look around. You see anyone? This thing's just sitting here begging to be used." "That's called stealing." "It's called borrowing. We'll bring it back." Roger was already walking toward it, that mischievous grin spreading across his face. "Come on, Harry. When's the last time you were out on a lake? Just us? Some beers? Some fish? This is what we came here for." Harry wanted to argue. He really did. But Roger was right. The lake was beautiful, the evening was perfect, and that boat was just sitting there. "Fine. But if someone shows up, you're doing the talking." "Deal." They dragged the boat into the water, loaded their gear, and pushed off. Roger took the oars, rowing them out toward the middle of the lake with surprising efficiency. Harry had to admit it felt good. The gentle rocking of the boat, the cool breeze off the water, the way the setting sun painted everything gold and orange. "See?" Roger said, shipping the oars and reaching for his tackle box. "This is perfect. This is exactly what we needed." They rigged their lines in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that only comes from years of friendship. Harry used a small spoon lure, something flashy that would catch attention in the clear water. Roger went with a worm on a hook, because Roger always went with a worm on a hook. "You're never going to catch anything with that," Harry said. "Watch me." 10 minutes later, Roger's line went taut. Oh shit, I got something." "Don't horse it, let it run." "I know what I'm doing." Roger definitely didn't know what he was doing, but somehow he managed to reel in a beautiful speckled trout, maybe 14 inches long, its sides flashing silver and red in the fading light. "Holy fuck!" Roger held it up like a trophy. "Look at this beauty. This is going in the pan tonight." Harry couldn't help but grin. "Nice catch, man. Seriously." Damn right it's a nice catch. This is just the beginning, Harry. We're gonna eat like kings. They stayed out until the sun touched the horizon, and by then they'd caught 3 more trout. 2 for Harry, 1 more for Roger. It was the most successful fishing trip they'd had in years, and Roger wouldn't shut up about it as they rowed back to shore. I'm telling you, we should come up here every weekend. Forget about everything else. Work, bills, all that bullshit. Just come up here and fish. You'd get bored after 2 weeks. Never. I could do this forever. They pulled the boat back up on the beach exactly where they'd found it, loaded their gear back onto the Ranger, and headed back to their truck to set up camp for the night. Roger insisted on cooking the trout himself, even though Harry was the better cook. They came out slightly burnt on the outside and slightly raw on the inside, but they tasted like victory. They sat around the fire, drinking beer and smoking cigarettes, Roger working his way through another joint while Harry poked at the coals with a stick. "You ever think about what we're doing with our lives?" Roger asked suddenly, his voice thoughtful in that way it only got when he was high. "What do you mean? Like, is this it? We work our shitty jobs, come out here a few times a year, and that's just life?" Harry considered that. "I don't know, man. I think maybe that is life. You find the things that make you happy, and you do them as much as you can. Everything else is just the stuff in between." "That's deep, Harry. That's really deep." "You asked." "I did ask." Roger took another hit. "I'm glad we do this, though. These trips. I don't know what I'd do without them. Without you, I mean. Getting sentimental on me? Fuck off. I'm serious. You're my best friend, man. Have been since we were kids. That means something." Harry felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the beer. "Yeah, Rog, it does." They sat in silence for a while, watching the fire burn down to embers. Somewhere in the distance a wolf howled, and another answered. The forest was alive around them, full of sounds and movement, and for a moment Harry felt perfectly content. "So," Roger said eventually, "tomorrow we head for the ridge?" "Tomorrow we head for the ridge. It's going to be a long haul. We should get an early start." "We should," Harry agreed, knowing full well they'd sleep until at least 9. They did sleep until 9, hungover and groggy, stumbling out of the tent to find the fire dead and the morning cold. Roger immediately lit a cigarette and started coffee on the camp stove while Harry tried to remember where he'd put the Advil. "I feel like death," Roger announced. "You look like death." "Thanks, buddy. Real supportive." They broke camp slowly, packing everything back onto the Ranger with the careful movements of men who'd drunk too much the night before. By the time they were ready to go, it was almost 11. "We're burning daylight," Harry said. "We're fine. It's like, what, 20 kilometers to the ridge? We'll be there by mid-afternoon, set up camp, and have the whole evening to enjoy the view." "If you say so." They followed the logging road north, the terrain getting progressively rougher. This was old-growth forest, the kind that hadn't seen a chainsaw in decades. The trees were massive, their trunks thick as cars, their branches forming a canopy so dense that the forest floor was dim even at midday. Roger was in good spirits, singing along badly to the radio and occasionally stopping to take photos with his phone, even though they both knew there was no signal out here. Harry navigated, checking the GPS on his phone against the paper map they'd brought as backup. "We should be coming up on the turnoff soon," Harry said. "There's supposed to be a trail that leads up to the ridge." "How far?" "Maybe 5 more kilometers?" "Easy." It wasn't easy. The road deteriorated into barely more than a path, forcing Roger to slow to a crawl. Branches scraped against the sides of the Ranger, and more than once they had to stop to move fallen logs out of the way. "This is taking forever," Roger muttered, checking his watch. It was already past 2. "We've got time." "Do we? Sun sets at like 7, that's 5 hours. We still got to hike up to the ridge, set up camp. So we'll set up camp in the dark. We've done it before." But Roger was getting antsy, Harry could tell. He kept checking his watch, kept looking at the sky through the trees. When they finally reached the point where they had to park the Ranger and continue on foot, Ishpatina Ridge was in a preservation area. No motorized vehicles allowed. It was almost 3:30. "Fuck," Roger said, staring up at the trail that wound into the hills. "That's going to take at least 2 hours." "Probably." We're going to be setting up camp in the dark. Probably. Roger lit a cigarette, thinking. What if we took a shortcut? Harry didn't like the sound of that. What kind of shortcut? Look. Roger pulled out the map, spreading it on the hood of the Ranger. The trail goes all the way around this ridge here, right? But if we just cut straight through, we could probably save an hour, maybe more. Or we could get lost. We're not gonna get lost. Look, we just head northeast, keep the ridge on our left, and we'll hit the trail on the other side. Easy. Raj, I don't know. Come on, man. It's getting late. You want to be stumbling around in the dark trying to set up a tent? This way, we get there while there's still light, we can actually enjoy the view, have a nice dinner, relax. Isn't that why we came out here? Harry looked at the map, then at the sky. Roger had a point. And it didn't look that complicated, just a straight shot through the woods. They had a compass. They had GPS on their phones. What could go wrong? All right, he said finally. But we stay together, and if it starts getting sketchy, we turn back. Deal. They loaded up their packs, tent, sleeping bags, food, water, all the essentials. Roger grabbed his rifle, Harry took his. They locked the Ranger and headed into the woods. The first 20 minutes were fine. The forest was open enough that they could move at a decent pace, and the terrain was relatively flat. Roger led the way, checking his compass every few minutes while Harry followed behind, keeping an eye on their surroundings. See? Roger called back. This is way better than that trail. We're making great time. Just keep checking that compass. I am. We're good. But then the terrain started to change. The ground became rockier, studded with boulders and broken by small ravines. The trees grew closer together, their branches low and tangled. They had to pick their way carefully, climbing over deadfalls and ducking under branches. Harry's pack caught on something, and he had to stop to untangle it. Raj, slow down. We gotta keep moving, man. Sun's gonna set soon. I know, just... That's when it happened. Roger was climbing over a fallen log, his pack throwing off his balance. His foot came down on what looked like solid ground, but it was just a thin layer of moss over a gap between rocks. His ankle twisted, and Harry heard the snap from 10 feet away. Roger went down hard, crying out in pain. His pack pulled him backward, and his legs scraped against the sharp edge of a rock, tearing through his jeans and into the flesh beneath. Fuck! Fuck! Roger was on his back, clutching his leg, his face white. Harry dropped his pack and rushed over. Don't move, let me see. He carefully pulled Roger's hands away. The jeans were shredded, soaked with blood. Harry pulled out his knife and cut the fabric away, revealing a deep laceration running from Roger's ankle halfway up his shin. Blood was flowing freely, and when Harry gently probed the ankle, Roger screamed. It's broken, Harry said, his mind racing. Your ankle's broken and this cut is bad. We need to get you to a hospital. No, shit. Roger's voice was tight with pain. Fuck, Harry. It hurts so bad. I know. Just breathe. We're gonna figure this out. Harry looked around, trying to think. They were in the middle of nowhere, at least an hour from the Ranger, maybe more. Roger couldn't walk. They had no cell signal. Okay, Harry said, forcing himself to stay calm. We're gonna set up right here. Get you comfortable, stabilize that leg, then I'll go back to the Ranger and get help. There's a first aid kit, Roger gasped. In the Ranger, I think. Fuck, I can't remember if we packed it. Harry's stomach dropped. The first aid kit. Had they packed it? He tried to remember loading the Ranger that morning, but everything was a blur. I'll go check, he said. I'll be fast. Just stay here. Don't try to move. Where the fuck am I gonna go? Harry helped Roger get his pack off and propped it under his head. He pulled out their water bottles and put them within reach. I'm gonna be back in an hour, maybe less. You're gonna be fine. Harry! Roger grabbed his arm, his eyes wide with pain and fear. Don't get lost, man. Please don't get lost. I won't. I promise. Harry shouldered his pack and started back the way they'd come, moving as fast as he dared. He tried to retrace their steps, looking for broken branches and disturbed ground, but everything looked the same. The forest was a maze of trees and rocks and shadows. He checked his compass. Southwest. That was the direction. He just had to keep going southwest. Part 2. Alone. Harry had been gone for 10 minutes when Roger realized just how quiet the forest was. He'd never noticed it before, not really. There was always something. Roger talking, the ranger's engine, the crackle of a fire. But now, lying on his back with his legs screaming in pain, he could hear everything. The whisper of wind through pine needles, the distant call of a raven, his own breathing, too fast, too shallow. "Calm down," he muttered to himself. "Harry's coming back. He's coming back." He tried to focus on something other than the pain. The sky was visible through the canopy, still blue, but starting to fade toward evening. How long until dark? 2 hours? 3? Roger reached for his cigarettes, fumbling them out of his pocket with shaking hands. It took 3 tries to get one lit. The smoke helped, gave him something to focus on. He took a long drag and tried to assess his situation. His ankle was definitely broken. He could feel the bones grinding when he moved, which he'd stopped doing after the first time made him nearly black out. The cut was bad too, still bleeding, though slower now. He'd need stitches, probably surgery on the ankle. "Fuck," he said to the trees. "Fuck, fuck, fuck." He should have listened to Harry, should have stuck to the trail. But no, he had to take a shortcut, had to be clever. Now, he was lying in the middle of the woods with a broken ankle, and Harry was out there somewhere, trying to find a first aid kit that might not even exist. Roger closed his eyes and tried to remember. Had they packed the first aid kit? It was usually in the Ranger, in the storage compartment under the passenger seat. But had they checked? Had they made sure it was there? He couldn't remember. Everything from this morning was fuzzy, his hangover brain not bothering to record the details. "It's there," he said out loud. "It has to be there." Time passed. Roger smoked another cigarette, then another. He drank some water, careful not to drink too much in case Harry took longer than expected. The pain in his leg had settled into a constant throbbing ache that made him nauseous. He thought about taking off his boot, but he was pretty sure that was a bad idea. The boot was probably the only thing holding his ankle together. If he took it off, he might not get it back on, and then what? The shadows were getting longer. Roger checked his watch. 5:47 p.m. Harry had been gone for almost an hour and a half. "Come on, man," Roger whispered. "Where are you?" Harry was lost. He wouldn't admit it, not out loud, but he was definitely fucking lost. He'd been walking for over an hour, and nothing looked familiar. He should have hit the Ranger by now, should have seen the logging road, but there was nothing. Just trees and rocks and more trees. He stopped, breathing hard, and checked his compass again. Southwest. He was going southwest. That was right. That had to be right. But what if he'd gotten turned around? What if he'd gone the wrong direction from the start? "No," Harry said firmly. "No, you're fine. Just keep going." He pushed on, climbing over a fallen log, ducking under low branches. His pack felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Sweat was running down his back despite the cool air. The forest was getting darker. The sun was setting, and under the canopy it was already dim. Harry pulled out his phone to use the flashlight, then stopped. He should save the battery. He might need it later. Later for what? To call for help? There was no signal out here. To find his way back to Roger. Roger. Fuck. Roger was back there, hurt and alone, counting on Harry to come back with help. And Harry was lost in the woods like an idiot. "Think," Harry muttered. "Think, God damn it!" He pulled out the map, but it was useless without knowing exactly where he was. The GPS on his phone showed his location as a blue dot in a sea of green, but the map wasn't detailed enough to help. He could see the general area, could see where the Ranger should be, but he couldn't figure out how to get there. Harry sat down on a rock, his head in his hands. This was bad. This was really bad. He thought about Roger, probably wondering where the hell he was, probably in pain, probably scared. They'd been friends for almost 10 years. They'd been through everything together: high school, first jobs, breakups, family shit. Roger had been there when Harry's dad died. Harry had been there when Roger's girlfriend left him. They were brothers, really. Not by blood, but by choice, and Harry had promised he wouldn't get lost. "Fuck!" Harry shouted into the forest. His voice echoed back, mocking him. He stood up, shouldered his pack, and kept walking. What else could he do? It was getting dark when Roger accepted that Harry wasn't coming back. Not tonight, anyway. He didn't want to think about what that meant, that Harry was lost or hurt or worse. He couldn't think about that. He had to focus on surviving the night. Roger dragged himself to a sitting position, biting back a scream as his leg moved. Okay, he could do this. He had supplies. He had his pack, which had his sleeping bag, some food, water. Harry's pack was here too, which meant more supplies. First things first. He needed to stop the bleeding. Roger pulled off his flannel shirt, leaving just his t-shirt, and tore the flannel into strips. He wrapped them around his shin as tight as he could stand, creating a makeshift bandage. It wasn't great, but it was better than nothing. Next, shelter. He couldn't set up the tent by himself, not with his leg like this, but he could make a lean-to, maybe, or at least get under some branches. Roger looked around and spotted a large spruce tree with low-hanging branches. If he could get over there, he could crawl underneath, use the branches as cover. It took him 20 minutes to drag himself the 15 feet to the tree. By the time he got there, he was sobbing with pain, his makeshift bandage soaked through with blood. But he made it. He pulled his sleeping bag out of his pack and spread it under the branches, then collapsed onto it. He lay there for a long time, just breathing, waiting for the pain to subside to something manageable. The forest was almost completely dark now, just the faintest glow of twilight filtering through the canopy. Roger knew he should eat something, should drink more water, but he couldn't move. He just lay there, staring up at the branches above him, and tried not to think about Harry out there somewhere in the dark. "You better be okay," he whispered. "You better fucking be okay, Harry." He must have dozed off, because when he opened his eyes again, it was fully dark. Not just dark, pitch black, the kind of darkness you only get in the deep woods, miles from any light pollution. Roger couldn't see his hand in front of his face. He fumbled for his phone, turned on the flashlight. The battery was at 43%. He'd have to be careful with it. In the pale light, Roger assessed his situation. His leg was still bleeding, though slower now. He was cold, shivering despite his sleeping bag. He was thirsty and hungry and scared. He thought about starting a fire, but he couldn't gather wood, couldn't move. And besides, what if Harry was out there looking for him? A fire might help Harry find him. Roger dragged himself out from under the tree, every movement agony. He gathered what dry wood he could reach, piling it in a small clearing. His lighter was in his pocket. Thank God he hadn't lost it this time. It took several tries with shaking hands, but eventually he got a small fire going, and the flames pushed back the darkness and Roger felt marginally better. He fed the fire carefully, keeping it small but steady. Smoke rose into the night sky, a signal that he was here, that he was alive. "Come on, Harry," Roger said to the flames. "Follow the smoke. You can do it." But Harry didn't come. The night stretched on, cold and dark and endless. Roger fed the fire and tried to stay awake, but eventually exhaustion won. He slept in fits and starts, waking every time the pain in his leg spiked, adding more wood to the fire, then drifting off again. He dreamed of high school, of him and Harry skipping class to smoke cigarettes behind the gym. He dreamed of their first camping trip, when they'd gotten drunk on stolen beer and Harry had thrown up in the tent. He dreamed of all the good times, all the years of friendship. He dreamed that Harry was okay. Harry spent the night walking. He knew it was stupid, knew he should stop and make camp, but he couldn't. Roger was out there, hurt and alone, and Harry had to find the ranger, had to get help. So he walked through the darkness, using his phone's flashlight sparingly, trying to conserve battery. He stumbled over roots and rocks, walked into branches, fell twice, and scraped his hands bloody. The forest at night was a different world. Every sound was amplified. The snap of a twig, the rustle of leaves, the distant howl of wolves. Harry's imagination ran wild. Seeing shapes in the darkness, hearing footsteps that weren't there. He was exhausted, running on adrenaline and fear. His legs felt like lead, his pack like an anchor, but he kept going. Sometime around midnight he admitted defeat. He couldn't see anything, couldn't tell where he was going. He was just wandering in circles, wasting energy and battery life. Harry found a relatively flat spot under a large pine and collapsed. He didn't bother with his sleeping bag, just curled up with his pack as a pillow and closed his eyes. He didn't sleep. He just lay there, listening to the forest, thinking about Roger. What if Roger's injury was worse than it looked? What if he was bleeding out right now, dying alone in the dark? What if Harry never found him? "Stop it," Harry muttered. "He's fine. He's tough. He'll be fine." But he didn't believe it. As soon as the first gray light of dawn filtered through the trees, Harry was up and moving. He checked his compass, checked his phone's GPS, and started walking. Northeast this time. He'd been going the wrong direction. He was sure of it now. The morning was cold and damp, mist hanging in the hollows. Harry's stomach growled. He hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon, but he ignored it. Food could wait. Finding the ranger couldn't. He walked for hours, the sun rising higher, burning off the mist. The forest looked different in daylight, less menacing, but no less confusing. Everything still looked the same. Harry was starting to panic. Really panic. He'd been walking for almost 18 hours now, and he was no closer to finding the ranger. He was lost, completely and utterly lost, and Roger was back there waiting for him. He stopped to drink some water, his hands shaking. He had maybe half a bottle left. After that, he'd have to find a stream or something. "Okay," Harry said out loud, trying to calm himself. "Okay. Think. What would Roger do?" Roger would probably smoke a joint and wait for someone to rescue him, but that wasn't helpful. Harry pulled out the map again, studying it carefully. Ishpatina Ridge was the highest point in Ontario. If he could get to high ground, he could see the surrounding area, maybe spot the logging road or some landmark. He looked around. The terrain had been gradually rising. If he kept going uphill, he'd eventually hit the ridge. It was a long shot, but it was all he had. Harry started climbing. Roger woke to sunlight and pain. The fire had burned down to ashes. His leg was a mass of agony, swollen and hot to the touch. The makeshift bandage was crusted with dried blood. He needed water, he needed food, he needed Harry. Roger dragged himself to a sitting position and took stock. His phone was dead. He'd left the flashlight on too long. He had maybe a liter of water left, some granola bars, beef jerky, not much. The forest was quiet in the morning light, just birds and the whisper of wind. No sound of Harry crashing through the brush, calling his name. "Where are you, man?" Roger said to the empty woods. He knew he should try to signal for help somehow. The fire had been a good start, but he needed something more, something visible from the air in case someone came looking. Roger looked around and spotted some deadfall, white birch logs, their bark bright against the dark forest floor. If he could arrange them in a pattern, maybe spell out SOS or something, it might be visible from above. It took him 2 hours to drag 3 logs into a rough X pattern in the clearing. By the time he was done, he was exhausted and dizzy from pain. But it was something. It was better than just lying there waiting. He crawled back to his sleeping bag and ate a granola bar, forcing himself to chew and swallow, even though he wasn't hungry. He needed to keep his strength up. The day passed slowly. Roger dozed, woke, added wood to the fire. He tried not to think about Harry, tried not to imagine all the things that could have gone wrong. But his mind kept going there anyway. What if Harry had fallen? What if he'd broken his leg too, or worse? What if he was lying out there somewhere, unable to move, unable to call for help? "Stop it," Roger told himself. "Harry's fine. He's smart. He'll figure it out." But as the sun started to sink toward the horizon again, Roger felt hope slipping away. Harry had been gone for over 24 hours now. If he was coming back, he would have been here by now. Roger was on his own. He built up the fire as the light faded, making it as large as he dared. The flames leapt high, sending sparks spiraling into the darkening sky. Smoke billowed up, thick and white. "Come on," Roger whispered, watching the smoke rise. "Someone see this, please." Harry reached the ridge just as the sun was setting. He'd been climbing for hours, his legs burning, his lungs screaming. But he'd made it. He stood on a bare granite outcropping, the highest point for miles, and looked out over the forest. It was beautiful. The trees stretched out in every direction, a carpet of green broken by lakes and rivers that gleamed in the fading light. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, the sun a red ball on the horizon, and there, maybe 2 kilometers to the south, a thin column of smoke rose into the sky. "Roger," Harry breathed. He'd found him, or Roger had found him. Either way, Harry knew where to go now. He started down the ridge, moving as fast as he dared in the fading light. The terrain was treacherous, all loose rock and steep slopes, but Harry didn't care. He could see the smoke, could use it as a beacon. He was coming, Roger. He was finally coming. Harry was halfway down the ridge when his foot slipped on a patch of loose scree. He tried to catch himself, but his momentum was too much. He fell hard, tumbling down the slope, his pack flying off. He hit a boulder with his left arm and heard a crack that made his stomach drop. Harry lay there for a moment, stunned. Then the pain hit, a white-hot spike that made him scream. His arm. He'd broken his fucking arm. No, 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 Harry gasped, cradling his arm against his chest. He could feel the bone grinding, could see the unnatural angle of his forearm. He wanted to cry, wanted to just lie there and give up, but he couldn't. Roger was down there, waiting for him. Harry struggled to his feet, his vision swimming with pain. His pack was a few meters away, caught on a bush. He retrieved it one-handed, biting back screams. He couldn't carry it, not with one arm. Harry dumped everything out, keeping only the essentials. Water, the first aid kit, thank God it was in his pack, his phone. He stuffed them in his pockets and started walking again. The smoke was still visible, a gray column against the darkening sky. Harry focused on it, used it to push through the pain. One foot in front of the other. That's all he had to do. Just keep moving. It was fully dark by the time Harry stumbled into Roger's camp. He saw the fire first, then Roger's shape beside it. "Roger!" Harry croaked. "Rog, I'm here!" Roger's head snapped up. "Harry! Harry! Oh my God, I thought—" He stopped, seeing Harry's face in the firelight. "Jesus, what happened to you?" "Fell. Broke my arm." Harry collapsed beside the fire, his whole body shaking. "But I found you! I fucking found you!" "You idiot," Roger said, but his voice was thick with emotion. "You beautiful idiot." They sat there for a moment, just looking at each other. Two best friends, both broken, both alive. "I got the first aid kit," Harry said finally, pulling it from his pocket with his good hand. Roger laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. "Of course you did. Of course you fucking did." Part 3. The Long Way Home. The first aid kit was small, the kind you'd keep in a car for minor emergencies. It had bandages, antiseptic wipes, some gauze, a few butterfly bandages, and 2 small splints meant for fingers. It was not designed for a broken ankle with a severe laceration and a broken arm, but it was all they had. Harry and Roger sat by the fire, taking stock of their injuries in the flickering light. Harry's left forearm was definitely broken. He could see the swelling, feel the wrongness of it. Roger's ankle was a nightmare, swollen to twice its normal size, the laceration on his shin angry and red. "Okay," Harry said, trying to think through the pain and exhaustion. "We need to stabilize everything we can. Then we figure out how to get back to the Ranger." "How far are we from the Ranger?" "I don't know. 2 kilometers? 3? I lost track." Roger closed his eyes. "Fuck." "Yeah." They started with Roger's leg. Harry cleaned the laceration as best he could with antiseptic wipes, Roger biting down on a stick to keep from screaming. The wound was deep, definitely needed stitches, but the bleeding had mostly stopped. Harry used the butterfly bandages to pull the edges together, then wrapped it in gauze. "This is going to get infected," Roger said through gritted teeth. "Probably. But it's better than nothing. The ankle was harder. They couldn't splint it properly with what they had, so Harry just wrapped it tightly with an elastic bandage from the kit, trying to immobilize it as much as possible. Roger's boot would have to serve as the splint. "Don't take the boot off," Harry warned, "no matter how much it hurts. If the swelling gets worse, we'll never get it back on." "Got it." Then it was Harry's turn. Roger did his best one-handed to clean the scrapes on Harry's hands and face. The arm was the problem. They needed to splint it, but the splints in the kit were useless. "We need something straight and rigid," Roger said, looking around. "A stick or something." Harry found two relatively straight branches, each about a foot long. Roger positioned them on either side of Harry's forearm, then wrapped them in place with gauze and tape from the kit. It wasn't pretty, but it would keep the bone from moving. "How's that feel?" Roger asked. "Like my arm is broken and splinted with sticks." "So, not great. Not great." They sat back, both breathing hard. The fire crackled between them, sending shadows dancing across their faces. "So," Roger said eventually, "what's the plan?" Harry looked at him. Roger's face was pale, drawn with pain. His leg was a mess. Harry's arm was broken. They were both exhausted, dehydrated, and miles from help. "We wait until morning," Harry said. "Get some rest. Then we try to make it back to the Ranger. Can you walk? Can you?" They looked at each other and started laughing. It was absurd, the whole situation. Two idiots in the woods, both broken, trying to figure out how to save themselves. "We're fucked," Roger said, still laughing. "So fucked." But they weren't giving up. They couldn't. They spent the night by the fire, taking turns keeping it fed. Neither of them slept much. The pain was too intense, and they were both too worried about what morning would bring. Harry used his phone sparingly, checking the GPS to figure out which direction they needed to go. The battery was down to 15%. Roger's phone was dead. They had maybe a liter of water left between them and a few granola bars. "We should have brought more supplies," Roger said at one point. "We should have stuck to the trail. We should have stayed home and gotten drunk on my couch." "Yeah." As the sky started to lighten, they prepared to move. Harry helped Roger to his feet. Foot, really, since Roger couldn't put any weight on his injured leg. Roger was taller than Harry, heavier too, and Harry only had one good arm. "This is gonna suck," Roger said. "Yep." They started walking, or rather, hobbling. Roger had his arm around Harry's shoulders, Harry's good arm around Roger's waist. They moved in an awkward three-legged shuffle, each step sending jolts of pain through their injuries. They made it maybe 50 meters before they had to stop and rest. "Jesus Christ," Roger panted. "At this rate, it'll take us a week to get back." "We'll figure it out. We just need to find a rhythm." They tried again, and again. Slowly, painfully, they developed a system. Roger would hop on his good leg while Harry supported his weight. They'd go 10 or 15 steps, then rest. Then do it again. The forest was waking up around them, birds singing, squirrels chattering. It was a beautiful morning, the kind that would have been perfect for hiking if they weren't both broken and desperate. Harry checked his phone. They'd gone maybe 200 meters. The Ranger was still over 2 kilometers away. "We need to leave the gear," Harry said. "Everything except water. We're carrying too much weight." Roger nodded. They dumped their packs, keeping only the water bottles and Harry's phone. Everything else, tent, sleeping bags, food, rifles, they left in a pile. "We'll come back for it," Harry said, "if we make it." When we make it. They kept going. The sun rose higher and the day grew warm. They were both sweating, both breathing hard. Harry's arm was screaming, and he could tell Roger's leg was getting worse. Roger's face was gray, his lips pressed into a thin line. "Talk to me," Harry said. "Keep talking. Tell me something." "Like what?" "I don't know. Anything. Tell me about the first time we went camping." Roger managed a weak smile. "You mean when you threw up in the tent?" "I didn't throw up in the tent. I threw up next to the tent." "You threw up in the tent, man. I was there. I had to sleep in that smell all night." "That's not how I remember it." They kept talking, trading stories, reminding each other of all the stupid things they'd done over the years. It helped. It kept their minds off the pain, off the impossible distance they still had to cover. They stopped to rest every few minutes, sitting on logs or rocks, passing the water bottle back and forth. They were down to half a bottle now. Harry tried not to think about what would happen if they ran out. "Remember that time we tried to build a raft?" Roger said during one rest stop. "Oh God, that thing sank in like 30 seconds. We were so sure it would work. We were idiots. We're still idiots." "Yeah." The terrain was getting rougher. They had to navigate around boulders and deadfalls, had to climb over obstacles that would have been easy with 2 good legs and 2 good arms. Each obstacle took forever, required careful planning and coordination. At one point, they came to a small ravine, maybe 3 meters across. There was no way around it. "We have to jump," Harry said. Roger looked at him like he was crazy. "I can't jump. I can barely walk." "I'll help you. We'll do it together." "This is a terrible idea? You got a better one?" They stood at the edge of the ravine, Harry's arm around Roger, Roger balanced on his good leg. They counted down together. 3, 2, 1. They jumped. They almost didn't make it. Roger's good leg hit the far edge, and for a moment Harry thought they were going to fall backward into the ravine. But Harry pulled with his good arm, and Roger pushed with his good leg, and somehow they scrambled up onto solid ground. They lay there for a long moment, both breathing hard. "I can't believe that it worked," Roger said. "Me neither." They kept going. The sun was past its peak now, starting its descent toward evening. They'd been walking for hours, and Harry's phone said they'd covered maybe 1.5 kilometers. They were close. So close. "I can see it," Roger said suddenly. "Harry, I can see the road." Harry looked up. Through the trees, maybe 200 meters ahead, he could see the break in the forest that marked the logging road. "We're gonna make it," Harry said. "Rog, we're actually gonna make it." They pushed on, ignoring the pain, ignoring the exhaustion. The road got closer. Closer, and then they were there, stumbling out of the forest onto the dirt road. And there, 50 meters down the road, was the ranger. "Oh, thank God," Roger breathed. "Thank God." They made it to the ranger and collapsed against it. Harry fumbled for the keys in his pocket, managed to unlock it with his good hand. They climbed in, both of them groaning with pain and relief. Harry started the engine. It roared to life, the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard. "Let's get the fuck out of here," Roger said. Harry drove slowly, carefully, back down the logging road. Every bump and rut sent fresh waves of pain through their injuries, but neither of them cared. They were moving. They were getting out. It took them 2 hours to reach the main road, another hour to reach the hospital in Sudbury. By the time they pulled into the emergency room parking lot, they were both barely conscious. Harry managed to honk the horn a few times before everything went gray. Harry woke up in a hospital bed, his arm in a proper cast, an IV in his good hand. The room was bright and clean and blessedly pain-free, whatever drugs they'd given him doing their job. "Hey," a voice said, "you're awake." Harry turned his head. Roger was in the next bed over, his leg elevated and wrapped in a proper cast, an IV in his arm, too. "Hey," Harry croaked. "We made it." "We made it." Roger grinned, though he looked exhausted. "Doctor said you've got a clean break in your ulna. Should heal fine. I've got a broken ankle, needed surgery to pin it, and 23 stitches in my shin, plus a nice infection that they're pumping me full of antibiotics for. Could have been worse. Could have been a lot worse." They were quiet for a moment, just looking at each other. "I'm sorry," Roger said finally. "This whole thing was my fault. The shortcut, getting us lost." "Shut up," Harry interrupted. "It wasn't your fault. It was just... shit happens. We're okay. That's what matters. You came back for me. You broke your arm and you still came back." "Of course I did. You're my best friend, you idiot." Roger's eyes were shiny. "You're my best friend too, man." A nurse came in then, checking their vitals and asking questions. She told them they'd been lucky, that it could have been much worse. They'd be in the hospital for a few days, then home to recover. "Your families have been notified," she said. "They'll be here soon." After she left, Roger turned to Harry. "So, About all our gear. Still out there in the woods. Think it'll still be there when we're healed up? Harry thought about it. The tent, the sleeping bags, the rifles, probably a couple $1,000s worth of gear, just sitting in the forest. Probably, he said. Bears might get into the food, but the rest should be fine. So, we're going back? Harry looked at his friend, at the casts and bandages, at the IV lines and monitors. He thought about the pain, the fear, the desperate struggle to survive. Yeah, he said, we're going back. Roger grinned. Damn right we are. Epilogue. Return to the Ridge. 3 months later, on a crisp October morning, Harry and Roger stood at the edge of the logging road, looking into the forest. Harry's arm had healed well, the cast-off for a month now. He still had some stiffness, but the doctor said that would fade with time. Roger's ankle was a different story. He'd be in a walking boot for another month, and he'd probably always have a limp. The scar on his shin was impressive, a thick white line that he'd taken to showing off at parties. You ready? Harry asked. Roger adjusted his walking boot and shouldered his pack. Let's do this. They'd planned this trip carefully. No shortcuts this time. They'd stick to the trail, take their time, and they'd told multiple people exactly where they were going and when they'd be back. They had 2 first aid kits, a satellite phone, and enough supplies for a week, even though they'd only be gone for 2 days. They were taking no chances. The hike to Roger's camp took most of the day. They moved slowly, Roger's ankle limiting their pace, but that was fine. They weren't in a hurry. When they finally reached the spot where Roger had spent those 2 days waiting, they found most of their gear still there. The tent was torn, probably animals, and the food was long gone, but the sleeping bags were intact and both rifles were still there, a bit rusty but salvageable. Not bad, Roger said, looking around. Could have been worse. They gathered everything up, packed it carefully. Harry noticed Roger was quiet, staring at the spot where he'd built his fire. You okay? Harry asked. Yeah, just thinking about those 2 days, wondering if you were coming back, if I was going to die out here. But you didn't. No, because you came back. Roger looked at him. You always come back. Always, Harry agreed. They made camp there that night, building a fire in the same spot Roger had used before. They cooked dinner, real food this time, not just granola bars, and sat around the fire drinking beer. You know what's funny? Roger said, staring into the flames. I was so scared out here. Thought I was going to die. But now, sitting here with you, it doesn't seem so bad. It's just like the woods. Just trees and rocks and sky. It's different when you're not alone, Harry said. Yeah. Roger raised his beer. To not being alone. Harry clinked his bottle against Roger's. To not being alone. They sat in comfortable silence watching the fire burn down. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, and another answered. The forest was alive around them, full of sounds and movement, but they weren't scared. They were together, and that made all the difference. The next morning, they packed up and started the long hike back to the ranger. They moved slowly, carefully, stopping often to rest Roger's ankle, but they made it. And this time there were no injuries, no drama, no desperate struggles. Just 2 best friends walking through the woods, carrying their gear and their stories. When they finally reached the ranger and loaded everything up, Roger turned to look back at the forest one last time. Think we'll come back? He asked. Harry thought about it, about the pain and the fear, but also about the beauty of Beaver Lake, the satisfaction of catching those trout, the way the sunset had looked from Ishpatina Ridge. Yeah, he said. We'll come back, but maybe next time we stick to the trail. Roger laughed. Deal. They climbed into the ranger and headed home, the forest falling away behind them. They'd survived something most people never would, had tested their friendship in the crucible of the wilderness and found it unbreakable. They were brothers, forged in fire and pain and the desperate need to save each other, and nothing would ever change that. 6 months later, Harry got a text from Roger. Beaver Lake next weekend? Harry looked at the text, thought about his comfortable apartment, his safe job, his predictable life. Then he thought about the woods, about the adventure, about sitting around a fire with his best friend. He texted back, "I'll bring the beer." Some things never change, and some things shouldn't.